Hello everybody, welcome into the first edition of our show, Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns. I'm Pat Nowacki. Seated to my left, we have Brian Jackson. Seated to my right, we have Matt Heslin. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Nicely done. Alright, the big story this week was the NFL Draft. Now, if any of you have been following the NFL Draft, it's a huge spectacle. It's got such good ratings that they moved it to Thursday nights at prime time, so it's a big thing as opposed to just the weekend. Now, the big story whenever the NFL Draft happens is who's going to go first. This year, it was obviously Cam Newton, who went to the Carolina Panthers. A little surprising to me, considering last year they just drafted Jimmy Clausen. Me being a Notre Dame fan, I'm a little biased towards him. I was still a little surprised. Brian, I know you're not a big fan of Jimmy Clausen. Do you think that was the right pick for Carolina?
I do, Pat. I feel with the NFL being a quarterback-driven league that you have to take the best quarterback available when you get the opportunity. And Cam Newton was by far the best quarterback in the nation last year. He was the number 2 rated passer. He was number 16 in completion percentage with 66.1, and he was completing a nation-leading 10.2 yards per attempt. So not only was he throwing the ball downfield consistently, but he was completing a high number of those passes.
I agree that it's a quarterback-driven league, and it makes sense for the Panthers to take him. Just because, as you said, Pat, the draft has become a spectacle, and it's just drumming up interest in the Panthers to take Newton. Although, I just don't think he's ready to play on the pro level. As you said, the best quarterback in college last year.
I want to stop you there.
Yep.
Last year, there was plenty of opportunity. When the story about his father shopping him around for money, when it broke, there was plenty of opportunity for him to fail. He could have cracked under the pressure, but instead he elevated his performance and actually played better after that happened.
I'm not really worried about the off-the-field stuff. It's on the field that I'm really worried about. I don't think he's ready to go. He's going to have to be the guy in Carolina, and I don't know if he can handle it yet.
See, I think that with their offensive line being another weakness, his scrambling ability is going to give him those few extra key seconds he's going to need to succeed early.
He's still going to take a few hits.
Now, moving past Cam Newton, obviously, there's also the other big thing. Anytime a draft happens, all the draft experts come out and they have their big debates. Who reached? Who was the best pick? Which team just did a great job? Which team did a bad job? Now, obviously, everyone asks, the big question is, which guy do you think shouldn't have went? Which team reached for a guy that could have got later?
I think by far, and you've heard a lot of this in the news lately, Christian Ponder out of Florida State going to the Vikings. He's clearly a second or third round talent. So taking him at the number 12 pick was just a huge reach. He's a guy that when you played Florida State, you never worried about him when you're playing Florida State. They got better with his senior year, but his stats actually regressed. He was the number 48 passer in the country rating-wise, which puts him middle of the pack, which in my opinion, you don't want the middle of the pack passer in the first round.
Absolutely. Ponder and Jake Locker went to Tennessee. They're probably not ready. It was probably too early to take him, but I think both those teams, they need a quarterback. They weren't that bad last year. They might just be a quarterback away. Why not take the guy who you think is the guy?
Now, moving on past that, you got the other side of the coin, which is people asking which team made the best pick. Like, which guy was the steal of the draft? Brian, I know you got some thoughts on this. Which team made the best decision which team got the best steal?
I have two. One being Anthony Costanzo of the Colts, and the second one being Ryan Kerrigan taken by the Redskins. Costanzo is a 4-year starter at Boston College. His freshman year, he actually protected Matt Ryan, so he's already got that in his head that he's protected a future NFL player. He also, Boston College, had the number 16 rusher in the country, which the Colts last year were number 29 in rushing. So they need to improve upon their offensive line in order to get those rushing stats up to help out the stud that is Peyton Manning. Second, with Kerrigan. Kerrigan was the best player in the Big Ten on a terrible Purdue team. He actually won Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. The guy's got a high motor, took on double and triple teams the entire year, and just kept putting up ridiculous stats.
Back to Costanzo, I think that's a great pickup for the Colts. He's going to immediately help them. And another instance of a good team just getting better. Saints picked up Cam Jordan late in the first round. He was projected to go top 10 maybe. He's going to help their pass rush immediately. He's going to start. He's going to be ready to go.
Now, the big question leading up to last year was the 3 quarterback race. Andrew Luck, Jake Locker, and Ryan Mallett. Which guy was going to be number 1 pick? Obviously, Andrew Luck stayed for his senior year at Stanford. And then obviously Jake Locker went in the second round, and after that Brian Mallett, he dropped all the way to the third. Now that surprised me.
I love the Patriots picking up Brian Mallett. I think he's not going to have to play for at least 2 seasons, and even if they don't need him to play, they got awesome trade bait. He could have went in the top 10, but he had to go in the 3rd round. I think that's going to work out for the Patriots.
I actually am going to take the opposite of that. Ryan Mallett, his entire college career, has had problems with the maturity. And so now, not only was he drafted in the 3rd round, which in my opinion, he's going to think in his head that's too low, but he's going to have to sit on the bench for 3 or 4 years, wondering to himself, when am I ever going to get a chance to play and behave himself at the same time?
That's a good point. Now moving past the NFL, the other big story, the NBA playoffs are going on right now. Biggest thing happening, for the 4th time in NBA history, the number 8 seed beats the number 1 seed, San Antonio losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. Now the question becomes, is that the end of the Spurs dynasty?
I feel the Spurs dynasty ended in 2007. They have not been past the 2nd round in the past 3 seasons. It's always been Tim Duncan's team. He's 35 now. His age has finally caught up to him. His minutes, rebounds, points are all at their lowest they've been in his career. And with that, the Spurs have gone down.
Yeah, they're not going to contend for any more championships, but they're still going to be good. They have too good of a front office. Greg Popovich is too good of a coach. They know what they're doing. They're just the best run organization in the NBA. They're going to keep winning 50 games.
I'd also like to add, the NBA always feels a league that if you try really hard in the regular season, you can win a lot of games. And then so many guys, they do just enough. The Celtics are a perfect example of this. They win just enough games to get in the playoffs. They reach the playoffs, and they take it to another level. The Spurs, the reason they're the 4th number 1 seed to go out is because they played as hard as they could during the regular season, and then they just don't have that extra gear because they already hit their top gear in regular season.
Too old at this point.
Real quick before we take off, NBA Finals, who's your teams?
Finals, I think it's going to be a change in the guard. I think you have the Heat taking on Oklahoma City. Durant's elevating his game, and LeBron has a chip on his shoulder not to prove something.
I think the Lakers are too good not to be there. Plus, I'm hoping for the Bulls in the East. Let's go with that.
All right. Well, Bulls and Lakers, Heat and Oklahoma City. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get back to you and talk about some NHL playoffs and early baseball. See you then. Welcome back to Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns. Once again, I'm Pat Nowacki. 2 new guests here, hockey and baseball guys. We have Nick Anderson to my left.
Howdy.
AJ Elzy to my right. Now, right now, we're in the best time of year for sports. We have baseball just starting up. We have the NBA playoffs, the NFL draft that we've already touched on, and the other thing, the NHL playoffs. Now, so far, it's been a very exciting series so far. We have, in the Eastern Conference, the first game I want to talk about, the Washington Capitals versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay knocked out my Pittsburgh Penguins in 7 games a few days ago. Nick, what are your thoughts on the series?
I think this bodes well for Washington. Last year was a big disappointment. They won the President's Trophy, best team in the league last year. This year they kind of had to work for it. They had an 8-game losing streak and just didn't play well for a couple months there. But Tampa Bay, like you said, they're coming off a long series. Washington's had some rest. But I think Washington is going to be the better team in this series, and they win in 6 games.
That hunger didn't do much for them in Game 1, though.
It's only 1 game.
I know it's only 1 game, but Tampa Bay's got one of the hottest goalies in the NHL going right now, Dwayne Rolison. I mean, Steve Yzerman, former Detroit Red Wing great, Lightning GM now, made some great midseason moves. They picked up Rolison from the Islanders. They traded for Simone Gagne, and it's been paying dividends for them right now. Won Game 1 on the road at Washington. I still think Washington wins this series, but it's looking like it may go 6 or 7 games.
Now, Game 1 between these two, Philadelphia and Boston, was kind of a beatdown. We have your thoughts on how that series will go on from here on.
I think it'll be a microcosm of that game. As Boston has been playing really well at the right time. They played Montreal in the first round. They kind of had to work their tails off for that playoff series victory. Last year was kind of a different story. Boston was up 3-0 on Philadelphia, and they had a 3-goal lead going into the second period. And the Flyers roared back and took the series in 7 games. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I like Boston in a quick series.
I agree with you there. Philadelphia's goaltending is not what you would call good. In Game 1, Brian Boucher gives up 5 goals in 2 periods. Yeah, Boston's going to sweep this series. Philadelphia, I'm sorry, they're not going to repeat the run they had last year.
All right, moving on to the Western Conference, we have Vancouver and Nashville. That's a pretty big one. What do you think?
That's a pretty big series. I mean, you have the best team in the league in the Vancouver Canucks. They won the President's Trophy this year. They let in goals against, and power play percentage for the year. Nashville's a very stout defensive team. They have a Norris Trophy finalist for best defenseman in Shea Weber, but I still like Vancouver. I know the series is tied at 1 game apiece currently, but I like Vancouver in 6 games.
Well, you mentioned earlier with hot goalies, Pecorino in Nashville probably is the hottest going in the playoffs right now, even hotter than Rolson in Tampa. He's standing on his head game in and game out. This is the furthest the Nashville Predators have ever gotten in the playoffs. They show no signs of slowing down. I know Vancouver won the President's Trophy, and I know Roberto Luongo, their goalie, exercised a lot of demons, finally getting by the Blackhawks in the first round. I think Vancouver wins this series, but it's going to go 7 games. Despite Rene, I mean, all these games are going to be really low scoring, 1-0, 2-1, things like that. I think Vancouver wins this one in 7.
Now, the last game of the series, last game of the second round, we have San Jose versus Detroit. I watched the Detroit game. Both San Jose's goals, flukes, puck, guy hitting it out of the air past the goalie, and then it going off on the Detroit Red Wings stick. Just heartbreaking loss. Do you think Detroit will be able to bounce back from that loss and still take this series?
I absolutely do. Detroit they're a team of professionals. They're almost the NHL version of the New York Yankees. I mean, they've been pros. They've won 20. They've made the playoffs 20 consecutive years. They're doing something right. They know what they're doing. They've won 4 Stanley Cups in that period. One speed bump on the road against San Jose isn't going to stop them. But I do think, regardless of all that, I do think San Jose with their goalie Antti Niemi. They have 3 lines. They can score whenever they want to. I do believe San Jose will escape the West.
I think Detroit's goaltending might ultimately lead to their downfall, but they do say in the NHL, you're not really in trouble in a playoff series until you lose on home ice, and the Wings haven't yet. They will. Jimmy Howard, not the greatest goalie in the world, but he's very serviceable, and the Wings are ageless. They're like a well-oiled machine. Lidstrom, Zetterberg, Datsuk. They had 9 days to rest after sweeping Phoenix, the only team in the first round to sweep. They may shake it off some rust in game 1. I think Detroit will come back and take the 7 games. I mean, all these series are they're just outstanding. I think this one will also go 7. But San Jose has more talent. They're younger. They're healthier. I think Joe Thornton and company win this one for the Sharks in 7.
Now you bring up the 9-day layoff. Earlier we had Tampa Bay, who had the 2 games worth of. They had a 7-game series against Pittsburgh, and they had 2 days rest. What would you say is the bigger factor? Which is harder to get over, the long rest or the short rest?
I think it depends on the team and the way they're structured. I know Mike Babcock with the Wings, I think they practice relatively short. I think the layoff of the Wings might have hurt them in the short run because we weren't really used to, they had to get back in the flow of things. Everything, especially in hockey, everyone's based on routine. And the Wings, they're 9 days without a game. I mean, in the playoffs, that's like an eternity. They did get time for Zetterberg and Datsuk to rest up. I think the rest probably hurt them in game 1. I don't think it'll affect them anymore the rest of the way.
All right, let me ask you this, putting you guys on the spot. Who wins the NHL playoffs? Who wins the Stanley Cup?
I like the Washington Capitals over the San Jose Sharks in 6 games in the finals.
I like the Vancouver Canucks over the Boston Bruins in 7.
All right, moving on past the NHL, we're going on to baseball. Now, 2 big stories right now. I know it's early in the year, it's just May, but we have the Boston Red Sox, who are off to an extremely slow start, spending all the money that they put into their team this offseason. And then, surprisingly, the Cleveland Indians leading the Central.
Break them up.
I think the bigger surprise this year, it has to be the Cleveland Indians because no one in their right mind would have picked them to finish maybe higher than 3rd at the beginning of the season. Yet here they are, sitting in first place with a sizable lead. I know it's only May.
I would absolutely have to disagree with Arnold on this one. It is definitely Boston. I'm going to side with all the media out there. Boston spends gajillions, innumerable amounts of money on their players, and they haven't had anything from Daisuke Matsuzaka in 2 years. John Lester has kind of become the ace of the staff. You would assume that it would be Josh Beckett, but John Lester very slowly has become the leader of that rotation. I would definitely say it's the Boston Red Sox that are the biggest surprise.
All right, I want to thank you guys for coming out. We're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for watching. Before we sign off, there's one little thing we call Pat's Piece. What I like to bring up is one interesting story in the realm of sports that I give you. This week comes from Chicago. Ozzie Guillen, White Sox manager, got suspended for 2 games after he got kicked out for tweeting about it. Now, out of all the things he's gotten suspended for, this is easily the dumbest. How do you tweet after you get kicked out? Anyway, thank you for watching. This has been Sports, Goals, and Touchdowns. See you next week.
I know a place where mugs like us belong, singing hey.